Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Borderless. I have my boss here today. She's amazing, welcome to the show, Kayla.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Me too. So I think I met you in 2016 when I went for the interview.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was 2017. Spring of 2017. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't think we've talked much outside work.
Right.
But you're such an amazing person, and that's one of the reason why I was like, you need to be on the show. Like, I need to get to know you better. You've been such an inspiration to me, and to like lots of other students as well. So I was like, I probably need to get to know you better before I leave.
Yes.
But like, where are you from? Like,
So first, thank you for all of the kind words. I love my students, and so I don't even think of it as work. I always find it so weird when my students will introduce me as like this is my boss, Kayla, and I'm like, yeah, but like we're all family, so But I myself am from Amarillo, Texas, tip-top panhandle, the only part of the state that looks like an actual shape. Bam,
Yeah.
smack dab in the middle. Flatlands, brown grass, and a whole lot of cows.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too much.
So how did you end up in Oklahoma?
So, I'm a first generation college student. My mom didn't go to college, come from a single parent household. But when I got to high school, I started attending a new church, and I started babysitting for this really nice family, this black family. And they just kind of became aunt, uncle, godmom, godfather, like the kinship in the black community. Like they weren't family, but they became family.
Yeah.
And so I call her my aunt, Lisa. She graduated from OU. She was
Nice.
so gung-ho, boomer sooner, everything. Annoyingly so, to the point that I wanted nothing to do with OU. She's like, oh, you should look at OU, this and that. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And coming from Texas, I also have all those Texas influences. So I knew that I was going to go to college, but I wasn't quite sure where. Had been to Texas Tech a couple of times. Had been to Baylor, like on a field trip or whatnot. And so my idea was I'm just going to stay in Texas. It wasn't until my senior year that I actually started thinking about things. And I don't remember what it was, but something prompted me to ask her if she would bring me to Sooner Saturday, which is one of the largest events. And at that point in time, it was for seniors. So it was early in the fall semester for seniors. Now it's for juniors. But I go the beginning of my senior year, me and my best friend, we're touring campus, and I mean, in all of like 10 minutes or so, I just fell in love. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this place. This is it. A complete 180, because I had absolutely no interest in attending OU whatsoever. And so I went home, submitted my application, and actually received my admissions letter
Nice.
the Christmas Eve of my senior year. So talk about a Christmas present. I was
Nice.
so excited, but at that point I was then left with okay, now how do I pay for
School.
OU, because I'm an out-of-state student.
Yeah.
And we don't have any money,
And OU is expensive.
and OU is a pretty little penny. I think at that point it was like $40,000 or so for a non-resident student. But during that time, my senior year, I was working really hard on scholarships and whatnot, and I was applying for a really big scholarship, the Gates Millennium. And if I received it, it was going to pay for my entire cost of tuition, anywhere I wanted to go, however long I needed to study under certain fields. And I was blessed, but I also worked very, very hard and received the scholarship. Was notified in April of my senior year, and that made OU possible for me. Nice. So I came here and had my entire tuition fees, everything paid for. Like I didn't have to worry about paying anything, and I had secured some other outside scholarships as well. So I was actually getting paid to go to school.
That's amazing.
Got a refund check every semester. Financial literacy was not a strength at that point. I'm like, man, what I could have done if I was smart with that money. But so I came here for undergrad, and whenever I graduated, I went to the University of Kentucky for my master's, And upon graduation there were a couple of positions that opened, and it was just the perfect opportunity for me to transition into a space where I could serve students that were in the exact same positions that I was in when I was in high school, trying to figure out, okay, what does this college thing
Where do I go
look
to?
like? And so it was a smooth little transition, and now I think of myself as a Texas transplant. Like, I'm from Texas, but Oklahoma's kind of home now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it all kind of came full circle.
Nice. That's amazing. I mean, I think that's a story with a lot of minorities here on campus. You know, a lot of us are like first generation students. I myself, mom, dad didn't go to college. You know, so it was hard just having someone to look up to. You know, but I went to a good school back home, and my friends were like super competitive. So that kind of like helped me stay in the loop of just wanting to, you know, be more, wanting to like just do more. You know, I remember we had an exam one time where like a 96% was a fail. So how it works back home is they take the mean, basically. So let's say 20 people take this exam, and then the mean was a 70. So everyone below a 70 fails. Everyone above. So yeah, we took an exam one time, and 96 was a fail. So like people were like super competitive there, you know. So that kind of like helped me the whole time, just wanting to do more, wanting to be more, you know, just study hard enough, you know.
Yeah, in that atmosphere, it's like a dog eat dog world, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. But being a first generation student, what did that mean for you? Like when you got all this money, when you got all the scholarship, and you're like, for sure I'm going to college. Like how did that feel for you?
Oh, man. So we grew up in extreme poverty, but my mom did a really good job of not letting us know that we were poor, or she masked the fact that we were poor. And it wasn't until I got to high school that some of those things started actualizing. And so high school students are just mean. If you weren't wearing like the name brand clothes or the shoes, or like if you didn't have a certain kind of car, you slowly but surely started to see where you fit in this class's hierarchy of high school, right? And so at that point, it was made very apparent that I was poor. And I saw my mom struggle on her own. She gave up a scholarship so that she could have me. She actually had a full ride scholarship and found out that she was pregnant with me. And my mom's white. So when she found out that she was pregnant, she went and told her parents, who were also white, and they just happened to know that she was attracted to black men. They didn't like that very much, and they asked her if she was having a black baby. And when she said yeah, they said, okay, well, get rid of it or get out. And when she made the decision to keep me and to take care of me, they completely cut her off. Kicked her out of the house, stopped supporting her financially, and she was made to fend for herself. And so growing up, she struggled. She did it all completely on her own. And I just saw a lot of things that I didn't want for my life. Not that it was anything that my mom did wrong. It was simply she gave up that college education so that I could have a life. And by giving up that college education came the sacrifice of, you know, some of the opportunities that come with it. And I realized that if I wanted to do better for myself, I had to go to college.
Absolutely.
But I also come from a high school where many students will either go to the community college or they'll go to like the D3 university that's right there on the outskirts of town, and they never leave our hometown. I just knew that I was destined for something bigger and better. I just didn't know how do I do this. It's crazy even now as a 27-year-old. I have a somewhat of a vision, but I'm still like, okay, how do I do this thing? But being a first generation student to me just means that I am in a position to break a generational cycle. The last thing that I want is to bring children into this world that lack some of the resources that I lacked. You know, there are two kinds of people. Those who see things that they don't want yet choose to be complacent in their current space and contribute to the cycle. Or there are those that see things that they don't want and make an active decision to disrupt
Absolutely.
cycle.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I'm doing. Was it difficult? Yeah, it was scary. It was crazy. I was surrounded by lower income, uneducated Black people, Black students, Black high school peers or whatnot, and their families. So coming to college, I was exposed to a plethora of different types of Black people. It was like one of the first times that I met people my age, like Black students my age, that came from affluent households, that were third or fourth generation college students. And it was just seeing the experiences, and for a short period of time, minimizing who I was and not sharing where I came from with people, because it was so completely different and I didn't think that they would understand. But now I realize that there were so many more students that came from very similar backgrounds, and we began to hold each other accountable in this process of, hey, you don't know what you're doing, I don't know what I'm doing, let's figure this out together. And it works great, because now in the work that I do, serving high school students who are largely first generation, I get to use that experience and talk about what is it that I wish that I would have known, and how can I now, having lived through some of these things, prevent you from having to experience some of the barriers that I experience, because I have the tools that I can equip you with, so you don't have to worry about those things.
Absolutely.
It's pretty awesome.
I mean, but look at you now, Kayla. You know, like...
You know, I think it's crazy amazing when your purpose aligns with your story and your experience. And I'm just super lucky to be in a position where that's exactly what happened for me.
And just like you said, there are two types of people, you know, those who make active decisions to say, hey, I don't want to be part of the cycle, you know, and now you're helping students who are first generation students, you know, like you said, tell them about college, about your experience, and just kind of like give them an opportunity to make better decisions, you know, like as simple as just, I want to go to college, first of all.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of these kids finish high school and they're like, you know, I just want to go to work. I just want to work, go to McDonald's or someplace else.
It's easy. Yeah.
It is. And once you start making money, you just get into that cycle. You know, you're like, well, I'm making money. I'm surviving. I don't need the college education. You know, so it's amazing what you're doing. And just like you said, when your story aligns with your purpose, it's so easy. And these kids can easily relate to you, basically. You know, and that's the good part of this all. But what are like some of the challenges you faced growing up as a Black woman, like just growing up in the U.S.? You know, with all the story with your mom and her family and.
So that is so very interesting. I will tell you, I didn't actually step into my full identity as a Black woman until I got to college. Because growing up with my mom, who is white, she tended to be somewhat in the culture, I guess you could say. She was attracted to Black men, and so she knew the music, she knew the language, you know, things of that sort. But the experience was something that she was completely ignorant to. And I found myself in this really weird space, being mixed, where I was too white for the Black kids, and I was too Black for the white kids. And so for the longest time, I struggled with this, okay, well, who am I then? And where do I belong? Because my father's not in the picture. I don't know who he is. I'm not sure I'll ever know who he is. And so it's like there's this entire other half of my identity that I have no exposure to. I was raised white, pretty much. But because I was in that weird space of not knowing who I was, I just happened to make friends with some of my Latino peers, and like they didn't care. They just kind of took me in like family. And so it's the Latino culture that I actually kind of fed into and encompassed as a part of my identity all the way through high school. I spent some time in Mexico. I learned Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish. And so that paired with the curly hair and the light skin, people would just assume that I'm Dominican or I'm Puerto Rican. And they wouldn't think twice about, you know, just bringing me into a conversation or allowing me to be part of something that they had going on. It wasn't until I got to college that I found myself hanging out with the Black folks, and at that point I definitely got some comments about being light-skinned and about, you know, speaking Spanish or whatnot, but at no point in time was my Blackness ever denied or disregarded. If anything, I had specific people that reminded me of the fact that I was Black. Like, no, baby, you're Black, okay? And so it was just very interesting. At that point, I also started taking classes in African and African American studies. So I got the historical aspect of this other side of my identity as well, which allowed me to gain a divine appreciation for our history and our ancestors and the work that Africans and African Americans contributed to this country and the establishment, the creation of the majority of the moneymakers in this country. And so I didn't really have too many like experiences as a Black woman growing up, or as a Black girl growing up, because it wasn't a part of my identity that I really understood. But now it's something that is just who I am, and that I've really stepped into and can own, learning about my history, having experienced that culture really deep. Now, I remember my first Black Thanksgiving that I went to with Lisa and Albert. So my godparents, my aunt and uncle, that family, I remember they took me to Memphis with them for Thanksgiving one day, or one year. And it was just so, it's like the stuff that you see in movies. I was excited and just overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness. There were the women in the kitchen, they were cooking, and you just smell all of the amazing food, and I'm a foodie, so I was there for it. There was like the older men and women, they were in the den with the organ and with the bass, and they were like singing and playing to like gospel music and whatnot. You had kids running around all over the place. The men were in the living room watching the football game, and I just remember being surrounded by all things Black culture, and was just so like, oh my gosh, what have I been missing out on my entire life? And so they kind of opened the door to exploring that Black identity for me. And now I can't say that I'm not white, because I understand that's a part of who I am, but I present to the world as a Black female. I am seen as a Black female, therefore I walk in this identity as a Black female.
Absolutely.
Crazy, right?
I mean, I'm so glad you embrace that part of you, and not only that, but you kind of like want to know more. Like you said, you took African American classes, and then the Thanksgiving kind of like opened that space for you to kind of like want to know more about your identity, and now I
got an ancestry DNA test.
Oh,
yes.
really?
So I took an ancestry DNA test a couple years ago, because again, I don't know my dad. I don't know if I'll ever know anything about him, and so like my Black half, I had no clue where my actual roots came from. And so I took an ancestry DNA test, and it was crazy. So I have ancestry from the Congo,
really,
and Benin and Togo,
nice,
and Nigeria.
Oh,
and I was excited about that one.
Nice.
Oh, like once I made friends with some of my Black colleagues here. Some of them were Nigerian, and I would always joke, like, you know what? I love like having met you all. I love Nigerian culture. I can bet you I'm Nigerian somewhere deep down. And I would always like joke with them, and they never believed me. And then it came out, and I'm like, nice. I am Nigerian. Wow. And that's the plan. At some point, I would love to make a trip to the continent, and specifically Nigeria, and kind of that area, and just get exposed to the real.
That's all West Africa. So it's gonna be easy for you to move from like Benin to Nigeria to Togo, because it's all in the West, so you should embark on that sometime. I know.
I love it.
West Africa is cool. I mean, the food, the music, like that's where everything is basically.
That's one thing I didn't get. I didn't inherit any rhythm, unfortunately.
Yeah,
we're gonna work on that.
We can work on it. Absolutely. Moving forward, how did you end up like working for admissions? And like DEP specifically.
Okay. So I served as an intern when I was an undergrad. An intern for the Office of Diversity Enrichment Programs.
Kind of like what?
Yeah, exactly what you do.
Ooh, nice.
Like, you're an intern. You've been an intern for 2 years. I was an intern. And so that was kind of my first exposure to DEP. And I didn't have the opportunity to go back to my high school because where I'm from, like, we don't reach those areas just yet, or not in a DEP capacity with the students. But just to be able to work with high school students, period, and share my experience and share my story and get them excited about coming to a place that I loved, it was awesome. And so did it all 3 years. And whenever I was graduating with my master's, I was looking at opportunities here because the thought was, hey, how awesome would it be to come back to OU in a staff capacity? What do they have going on there? I knew people. I was familiar with the area, the campus, the resources, and it was just perfect. Interestingly enough, I applied to this job. I emailed someone who worked in the office to let them know, hey, I applied. Do you have any insight or advice or anything of that sort? And I never heard back. So I accepted a position in Seattle. I was offered a position with Planned Parenthood in Seattle. And I was one of the very few people in my master's program to graduate with a job waiting on them. So I was excited, and I'm like, hey, they've been offered. This is where I'm going. I'm going to go do it. And 2 weeks, so I'm in Texas. I had moved back to Texas. I had like a month of transitionary period before moving to Seattle. At like week 2 or so, I get a call about this position here. Interviews, the whole nine. And I'm like, okay, I'd love to interview. I let them know my timeline. Like, I've accepted a position elsewhere. If this has to be expedited, I would love to come back, but this is kind of what my timeline looks like. I remember interviewing, and towards the end of the interview, I asked for a timeline. What's you all's expected? Like, when are you looking to hire? And it was around this same period because I remember they were preparing for the conference that I'm getting ready to go to next week. And they said, well, we're going to a conference next week, and then we've got a couple interviews the week after that. And so we're looking at about 3 weeks or so, which was past my timeline. And so I had to make a decision, and I prayed about it, and it was okay, God, I would love to be here, but I've got this up here. I'm putting this in your hands. You let me know how to proceed, because I knew that it was that weird middle area of like, I wouldn't have heard from OU before it was time for me to go to Seattle. So if I chose to wait on OU, I would have given up this opportunity in Seattle, not knowing I had something here. The biggest leap of faith ever. But there came a time when I found some peace, and I was like, okay, this is it. I called Seattle. I told them that I wasn't coming, and I waited. And I happened to be chaperoning a trip of high school students to visit OU's campus when they call me and offer me the job.
Nice.
And so I came back in that capacity, and the ability to serve these students and to relate to them. And I look like I'm 12 half the time, so they just think I'm one of them, and I'm just excited as they are. So I'm just high energy, and I pop into these high schools, and I'm like, hey, you have dreams? Let's make them happen. Here's how we're going to do it. And so DEP has been pretty consistent in my life since I was an undergrad, and now for even this to come full circle, and for me to be in a position where, you know, I'm working with some of the people that were mentors, like Jared. He was my supervisor when I was a DEP intern. Tassaquah, JT, So he was my supervisor. We're now colleagues, and so it's crazy to see how I get to be involved in a capacity that really changes lives. And that's the cool thing about it. When you look at the impact of the work that we do, I'm blessed to be in a position where I don't have to worry about one of these dead-end jobs or getting stuck in a routine where you hate your life, you get up, you go to work, but you have to do it because you've got bills to pay, and it's like, I hate this.
Absolutely.
I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work. I see the impact both immediately but also long-term when the students get here to campus, and it's just fulfilling and exciting. Like, what?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something that, and that's why a lot of us kind of like try to like give our best to DEP, because we see how much you love DEP, how much you love the work you do. And that was this day, I think it was sooner Saturday actually, when we were supposed to be there at 6.
At 6 o'clock in the morning,
6 o'clock in the morning, And then I woke up, I opened my group me Kayla is making a video. I'm like, how does she have all this energy?
Like 5 in the morning.
Yeah, like how, you know? And I literally just woke up at that time. I was like, yo, you know, and for me that's
on,
yeah, I woke up and I had to go take a shower and dress up and go. But like we see all those things you do, how much energy you put into it, how much effort you put into it, and that kind of like makes us, you know, be more responsible and say, hey, you know, like you have to put much energy into this as well.
That's the goal. I'm trying to get y'all out here to be great. Like, let's be great together.
So basically, you grew up, like you said, in poverty, and then look where you are. Look where you are today, basically. So for the students who you're dealing with now, like when did you realize you wanted to, you know, kind of like mentor them or help them? Like at what point did you realize this is what I want to do?
It wasn't until probably I transitioned into this role, because previous to this, I told you I accepted a position with Planned Parenthood, and I got my master's in public health. So the goal there was to work in a space where I could provide sexual health education to populations who needed it the most. So I knew that I wanted to work with underrepresented populations in some capacity, and I knew that I wanted to be helping people in some form or fashion. Initially it was in the health field. But when I transitioned into this role and I got firsthand insight into the power and the influence that we have over these students' lives, I understood and realized that this is it's a responsibility.
It is.
And it's one that can't be taken lightly. Like understanding you have students' futures in your hands sometimes. And it was just kind of one of those things that clicked for me, like who better than to influence these students and to encourage and to empower these students than someone who's been exactly where they've been.
Absolutely.
And when I would visit with them, it was just reinforced when I would share my story and I would let them know I had the exact same thoughts. This is how I did it. They would come up to me and they would let me know, like, hey, I was sitting here and I didn't think that OU was a thing for me, and then you came and you spoke about how possible it was, and now I think I can do it. Like, can you help me do it? These students have an entire society telling them that they can't because of the color of their skin, because of the neighborhood that they grow up in, because of the school that they go to. They've got teachers, counselors, and principals that are telling them that, you know, OU is too big for you. OU only wants your money. Maybe you should go somewhere smaller. And realizing that all they needed to see was one person who could tell them that, no, you absolutely can, and here's how I'm going to help you do it, made all the difference. And I realized, okay, this is it. The fact that it came so naturally, I never felt like I was at work. I got a feeling of like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And now 3 years in, I've got students from a school who the school itself reinforced, hey, you should be looking elsewhere. Don't look at OU. Now going into their junior year of college here on OU's campus, I've got an entire board of thank you letters and of graduation announcements, because that just reminds me of my why. I sometimes joke about being in the business of changing lives, but I realize that it's by no means a joke. That's literally what we're doing sometimes. And hearing from students who'll be like, hey, I couldn't be here if it weren't for you. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for me meeting you my senior year and forming a relationship with you and you walking me through this process. It's crazy. And now I'm in a position where I can't see myself doing anything else.
That's amazing.
Period.
That's amazing.
Nothing else.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy you love what you're doing, honestly, because it's so hard for people to usually to find something they enjoy doing and just stay with it. So, you know, I had a friend who, just like you, we studied in the business school together. You know, he's really good at making videos, like really good, like he's talented.
Yeah.
But he was doing business, and then he realized I need to move to Gaylord, and then he moved. He's enjoying his life right now. You know, so like just studying what you love, you know. So I'm so happy for you, you know. And like I said, we see the energy you put in, and you literally changing lives. I remember when we had the send off for the seniors, and everyone was like literally crying, and people were saying thank you so much, Kayla. Like, you know, you and Trey, you know, you guys do so much for us, and not just for us, but for like students coming in, you know. And like you said, I don't know if it was what's his name, Sad, saying he, like, they literally meet students who they've given tours to before, and they're like, I'm here because of you, like, and that feeling is everything.
You can't replace it, and it's just one of those things. I do it not for the thanks or for the gratification that comes with it, but because I've been there and I understand that there were specific people in my life that saw something in me and poured into me, and I wouldn't be here if it weren't for very specific people. Absolutely. And I can pinpoint those people and I can name them. And so knowing that I can be that person for someone else, not for my own gratification, or not to get the, oh, thank you, Kayla, I wouldn't be here without you, but to see you on campus thriving, to see doors opened for you and opportunities provided because you had the courage to work with me and to take this step and charter into unmarked waters.
Absolutely.
And experience something that no one in your family has done before. And man, we out here, Michael. What?
Kayla, you know, you're amazing. You always smiling. You're always so happy. You're always so cheerful. Have you always been like this, or was this something that developed, you know, along the way?
I've always been high energy. I talk, and I talk a lot. I was one of those students in like elementary school. I always had good grades, like straight A's, but my report card would come home and I would have straight A's, and then I would have checks on my report card for excessive talking. My teachers would be like, she's so smart, but she talks so much.
So they put checks on the report cards for talking?
Yes, like any of like negative characteristics or things that they perceived as negatively affecting a student's ability to learn, so that the parents knew, like, hey, you need to work on this with your kids.
Makes sense.
And I would always get checks for talking. She talks. I'd been moved so many times. I remember my junior year of high school, my AP English teacher, I was having a conversation with my friend at the time, like we were both talking, but she moves me. And I'm like, man, it takes two people to have a conversation. Why am I the only one being moved here? It's like, because you just talk too much. So I would say in terms of the energy, I've always been high energy. Excitement, there was definitely a time in my life when I tended to focus a lot on the negative. I was very nitpicky and lacked self-awareness. I lacked respect for myself, which contributed to my moods sometimes and the actions which would affect my moods. But here in the past couple of years, really just stepping into who I am outside of other people, like owning my identity and my personality and not worrying about what other people think about me. I think for a long time, I was seeking validation in other people, other people's approval, other people's affirmation and validation, and doing things less for myself and more so for the approval of others. And just realized that, I mean, like, it's tiring. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
At what point are we able to just be us? And so having stepped into that and owning it and trust, it's still a work in progress. There are definitely still times when I find myself, hey, what do you think about this? And a little too preoccupied, not the way that I used to be, but still somewhat preoccupied with other people's perceptions, but really just transitioning into this is who I am, and there's not a whole lot of things that can move me. And when you're confident and you're comfortable in yourself and in your skin, in your purpose, then I just have found contentment. You gotta stop
Absolutely.
comparing yourself to other people. We're so prone to, what is so and so doing, and they're doing this at this age, and I feel like I should be doing more. And we get lost in the in the puzzle that is, who am I compared to someone else, and just come to realize that my purpose is for me. What is for me is for
It's
me,
for you,
and there's nothing that can change that outside of me.
Absolutely.
Like, the only person that can stand in the way of my purpose is me. So now I'm just one of those really happy-go-lucky, super excited, high energy.
That's amazing.
I understand that my mood moves others.
Absolutely.
And so
I woke up that day.
I just refuse to be someone that's going to be a Debbie Downer, or, spreading my negative energy to other people. I've also found that sometimes it's checking your own negative energy. Actually, yesterday, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, I got an email that I just didn't like, and it's like, man, my day. And then I actively told myself, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to let this ruin my day. This is small. Let's get stuff done. Like, speaking those things over myself and reinforcing them, because it's so necessary.
It is. That's amazing. I saw a quote once which says, as long as you keep comparing yourself with people, I'm just paraphrasing, you'll always be behind them, because you're like comparing yourself with that guy. It's like, oh, he's here, like I need to. So you never get to be on top of them, because you always want to be where they are. And I'm like, whoa, that's actually true.
Yeah, like, focus on
yourself. Yeah.
Because you also don't know what they're encountering or what they're going through in this process. All you see is the output.
Exactly.
But do you see?
Absolutely. And it's so important we focus on ourselves, because there's so much we can learn. Like, people change, like you change, and sometimes we don't even realize we change. So you gotta like have to try to know yourself better. That every single day. But like, what would you say is your favorite thing, or like, what are your favorite thing about like working with students, and what are like your not so favorite thing working with students?
Favorite thing working with students is getting to know who they are. I won't call them kids, because at this point they're not kids, but these young adults, they are in a process of stepping into their identity. They're going from high school, where their parents may do everything for them, and their days are structured by school and work, or whatever the case may be, and they've got other people dictating how they move in the world, which largely contributes to how they see themselves. I know that our surroundings contribute to our self-perception, right? And so in this transitionary period, they are stepping into who they are outside of their parents, outside of their high school identity, and being able to like watch them grow. I have had students who I see them in their senior year, and we'll have, a brief conversation, but in that brief conversation, I'm like, okay, this one's here they're gonna go do big things. They don't know it yet, but they're gonna do some awesome things. And then getting to watch that actually come to fruition, seeing them on campus, taking leadership positions, creating conferences, running this organization. It's just amazing to watch that student identity development, like, in the moment. And I also love that in sharing these, in having these relationships with students, they share their lives with me. I consider them family, knowing that I don't have too much of a family that I associate with my own. Like, I'm very, very independent in terms of my outside life. And so that concept of family and bringing these students into my family, and them feeling comfortable enough to share their life and their stories and their struggles with me, it's just amazing. In terms of the things that I don't necessarily like about working with students, there's not too much outside of the fact that, high school students are high school students, and they don't read sometimes, so they'll shoot me an email, and they'll be asking me basic questions that, one, can be found on the internet. Hey, have you typed this into Google just yet? Right. Or those like in an email that I sent you, and they're emailing like, hey, where do I go? And I'm like, baby, refer to the first email where I gave you specific instructions. So just like I said, small things. Sometimes they don't read. Sometimes they ask questions that can be found on Google. Not too much else. Like I understand that these students are full people with full identities and full personalities,
Absolutely.
and that like I embrace them in their entirety. And that's something that, as I've told you all with DEP, like I wanted to facilitate a place where on this big campus full of white folks and dominant culture, where you have to code switch, where you have to assimilate, where you have to minimize yourself, I want you to have at least one place where you can come in and be authentically you in your full entirety and not worry about what so-and-so is going to think about this part of you or that part of you. I love you all regardless, and so
we love you too. We love you too, Kayla, honestly. And for me, like, I have a lot of African friends here and I can always hang out with, but I always wanted to know more about the African American culture. Like we come here, we don't interact with African Americans for the most part. So just going to DEP sometimes and just hanging out there, I've never felt like an outsider. Like I've never felt like, oh, I'm African and it's like we're different. Like I've always just felt like I belong. And for me that meant a lot to me. I never ever have I felt like, well, you're African, they're African Americans. So it was a good space for me to just go talk to people. Like I was talking about soccer with Trey. And I don't get to talk about soccer with a lot of Americans here. So that was a good space for me to just be.
Oh, y'all be chopping it up about soccer in the office, yeah.
So I really like DEP has been such a huge part of my life here, and it's been good working with the students and everything. But like for DEP, like your interns, like what were the challenges? Like what were the things you liked about working with DEP interns, and what didn't you like working with DEP interns?
Yeah, my interns, as I said, they're like family. And I just love that they come and everyone brings something completely different to the table. You see on the group me, we've got our jokesters and those that are all for humor. We've got those that when it comes time to get work done, I mean, everyone steps up, but there's always a couple of shining stars that are like, I'm here, I got you, what do you need? Where can you use me? We've got some that are just really like academically driven. We've got those that'll pop in with the random like words of encouragement. Really just, I enjoy seeing you all interact with each other, because I have a very specific individual relationship with every single intern, and those relationships are completely different based on the intern. But it's also so cool to see you all kind of come in and interact with each other. Some of you have known each other beforehand, some of you have never met each other in your life, and so it's like, how do we come together? And it's like we're creating a new family atmosphere every year. We are adding members to the family every year. I love the tenacity and the resilience of these students, because a lot of them come in with similar stories. Maybe not the exact same experiences, but they encountered barriers when they were trying to access higher education. Their parents didn't go to college. Their parents migrated from another country and are completely, outsiders in dominant culture. They didn't have the money and they're on loans, or whatever the case may be. They all have similar stories, and they come to campus, and despite those barriers, they are pushing forward. Absolutely. And they are disrupting the norm of what we consider, or of what society tends to make underrepresented populations look like. And I admire y'all. I admire them as a whole. And I love the fact that I get to be in a position where you all get to be greater than I am, because I've done some of these things, and I'm going to warn you, hey, don't do this, because I did it and it didn't turn out too well for me, In terms of things that I don't like, again, there's not too much that I don't like about working with the interns. I mean, small nuance, not necessarily nuances, but things like schedules. I mean, sometimes it's difficult when you're trying to coordinate stuff. You're trying to coordinate 45 different student schedules, and I can't really be upset because I want y'all to be out there being leaders and whatnot. So, oh, I can't come. I've got this organization meeting, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. So coordinating schedules is a bit difficult. I wouldn't necessarily say I don't like it. That's just one of the things that I tend to find a bit difficult. Even then, like, I really can't think of anything that I don't like from you all's perspective.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, students just go into the office, sit down, study, even though they are up for like office hours, you know, and that's just a space like you guys provide for us, basically, you know, that safe space. Like, there were times I wouldn't even go to the library. I'll just go to the office just to study, you know, and that's amazing. But like, with the whole admissions thing, moving on from that, you started Fit Kitchen.
Fit Chick Kitchen, yes.
How's it called?
Fit Chick Kitchen.
Fitty Kitchen.
It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
Fitty Kitchen.
Fit Chick Kitchen.
Oh, Fit Chick Kitchen.
There we go.
Oh.
We're fit chicks. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice.
Fit Chick Kitchen.
How did that come about? Like,
okay. So about, let's say, 2 years and 80 pounds ago.
Yeah.
I was working full time, was going to school full time, and I realized that I was eating out a lot, and I gained like 60 pounds during my undergraduate career. Like, I was, it was not, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration when I'm doing the math now. It was like, well, it was like 45 to 50, but I gained some nasty weight. And when I graduated grad school, moved back, like I said, I was just working full time, and then I started school full time, and I realized that I was eating out a lot. I didn't really have time to do anything. So I started prepping for myself on Sundays. I would just prep all of my meals for the week. And I was trying to be intentional about them. How can I incorporate my vegetables and make sure that I'm still having balanced meals, but that also taste good? My best friend, Isabel, was at the house one Sunday, and I happened to have some extra food, and I was like, oh, hey, you want to take one of these meals with you for the week? She was like, oh, yeah. She took it. She texted me randomly. She's like, Kayla, this is fire. Wow. Can I come and, like, cook with you, or can we do this? I'm like, oh, yeah. So she just started coming and cooking with me on Sunday, so she would get hers as well. I would randomly post them to Instagram, and we'd get like comments like, ooh, that looks good, this and that. Had a couple people start to ask if we like sold them. In the meantime, like, we're working out and sticking to like our meal preps, and we start dropping weight, the both of us. Nice. And so by about, this time last year or so, about last June or July, I had lost maybe 20 pounds or so. And so it was visible enough that people were like, oh, okay, I see you losing a little weight. And so we decided to start selling them kind of informally. We sold them for a couple of weeks, and then I transitioned into the interim role, the interim director role. And so my schedule got crazy busy. It was no longer feasible. We put it on ice and decided to rebrand, get all of our ducks in a row, and come back ready to like launch everything all over again. And in that time, continued still doing our meals and working out. And since that point in time, I have lost a total of like 60 pounds.
Wow.
It's crazy. I've lost like 60 pounds. Isabel has lost 40. So together, we've collectively lost 100 pounds. And we relaunched in February officially. So it was just kind of one of those, this past February. So it was just kind of one of those, okay, we have balanced, healthy, tasty meal prep, so you're not having to worry about that bland grilled chicken and vegetables and white rice every single day. I'm not here for it. My taste buds hate me for stuff like that. And so we started creating. They also look really pretty. Like, Isabel's great with the visual side of things, so she plates them. And so they look pretty, they taste good, they're balanced, and we have the results to prove that they actually work. Because last semester when I was in interim, I didn't have time to hit the gym. It was simply my meals. And even with staying on my meals, I continued to lose weight. And so now I'm at a point where I'm losing like the lower part of my abdomen. That takes a lot of work, but more so now like toning and just getting my body like, you know,
nice,
getting it right and tight, you know. But yeah, so Fit Chick Kitchen was really just we tried it on a trial and error type. We did this for ourselves. It works. Other people are interested. Hey, they're willing to buy. Let's try this out. And now we have a nice little client base of people that buy our food.
That's amazing. So how can I, access you guys?
Instagram. Okay, so we are a small business at the moment. So we are a two-woman team. So you can follow us on Fit Chick or on Instagram at Fit Chick Kitchen.
Okay.
And then we have an email listserv. You can DM us, let us know that you want to be added to it. We release menus every week. You submit your money and your order forms, and then you can pick up or we deliver. And so you have updated menus.
Nice.
Every week, you know what we're cooking. You can check our profile and see some of the pictures of the food that we cook. I love being in the kitchen, so I can absolutely throw down on some healthy alternatives, but I'm a Southern girl, so I also have no problem putting my foot in some things and adding some butter and deep frying a little some and getting you a nice, not healthy, but it tastes like heaven kind of meal. So just one of those stress relievers for me. And now it's cool because it's become something that we are like profiting from, but it's weird then even because we don't do it for the profit. I just really like seeing people who eat my food and they're like, oh my gosh, Kayla, this is good. Like, thanks. I think so too.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So how do you balance all that, like, running the business and school? And
I don't know. I get this question all the time, but I found that I just don't do well with idle time. For the longest time, I've just been go. So if ever it gets to a point in time where I don't have anything to do,
you find something.
I don't do anything.
Yeah.
I am super unproductive. So as of right now, it's like I'm working, so I'll work 8 to 5. In the evenings, I'm either in class or I'm reading or doing homework or stuff for my dissertation now. And then on weekends, so we spend Saturdays grocery shopping and like prepping the food itself. So we'll cut and like prepare all of our food so that on Sundays, all we have to do is cook, plate, and prepare / or have them pick up or we'll deliver. So I've realized that when I'm with that, I'm pretty much working 7 days a week. But I think that a lot of my ability to balance comes from the fact that I'm so passionate about all of the things that I do that I never really think of them about, like, I never think of them as work.
Makes sense.
Like I'm at work 8 to 5, and like there are some times when I'll just do a little spin in my chair and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting paid for this. There are people that hate their jobs, and someone's paying me to do this, and it doesn't feel like work. That's so crazy awesome, So I think when, again, you align with your passion and your purpose, and and paraphrasing again that quote that I've seen, like, find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's kind of where I think I'm at now. I love everything that I do. Amazing. So
that's amazing. I'm excited for you, honestly.
All the way up.
All the way up.
Breaking all of the generational cycles, climbing all of the ladders, shattering all of the glass ceilings because they are not barriers for us, and really just out here trying to be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kayla, honestly, like, it's been a pleasure knowing you. It's been a pleasure just getting to work with you. You're amazing. And I mean, I know we'll stay in touch, so it's all good.
Don't leave me.
I'll come back sometime.
No, I love it. It's been an absolute honor just getting to know you and you sharing your culture and the stories in your life. Again, it's one of those, thank you for trusting me with your life and with your experience. I don't take it lightly, as you know. It's not at all anything that I push to the side, but take with great responsibility, and I'm so glad that you've seen me as such. So for the culture.
For the culture, Kayla. Just closing up, basically, what advice would you give to like young professional, like people of color out there who come from disadvantaged backgrounds and are trying to like make it big in life?
You have to have a vision when no one else has a vision, and don't allow society to shape how you see yourself. If I think about myself, I shouldn't be here. I had every single odd against me. But I also realized that I was so much more than just a statistic. And in realizing that, refused to become that statistic. There are just certain spaces that aren't meant for you. And so recognize those spaces, navigate them regardless, and then look back knowing that you were able to overcome and be successful at something that was never intended for you to begin with. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, when you know who you are and you don't allow the outside world to shape how you view yourself and how you choose to maneuver in the world, the possibilities are literally endless. But I also understand that, like, hey, it's so easy to get caught up in what other people think about you, what other people are expecting of you. So know that it's normal to do so. It happens. But at no point in time should we place more emphasis on how others view us than we do on how we view ourselves. Because at the end of the day, others people's perceptions aren't getting us to where we want to be.
Absolutely.
When we get there, it's not going to be, hey, we got here together. Though, yes, there is a level of accountability. If these people aren't contributing to your growth and your upward mobility, the perceptions are irrelevant. You know you. And sometimes, what's that gospel song say? Sometimes you have to encourage yourself. So surround yourself with people who are going to pour into you. Know yourself. And don't take no for an answer. You can't get into the front door? Guess what? There's a back door. There's a window. Shovel through that little chimney. We are getting in.
Just get in.
In some form or fashion. And don't take no for an answer.
I feel inspired right now.
Hey, don't boost me.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
No.
It's been a pleasure.
What? We hug. Oh, thank you.
Of course. Pleasure is all
much.
mine.
Thank you all. Bam. Good.
Yeah.
And